What's up, guys? What's going on? I like to grade cards. If you watch my videos or if you've been on my channel before, I don't think there's any secret there. And I got a video here on another grading company. Go figure, right? So we're going to talk about it. Welcome back. Company, Tag. Technical authentication and grading. Tag grading is transparent, accurate, and consistent machine grading. No human graders, no subjectivity, none of that. Machines are doing the work. So let's talk about why we grade cards. We grade cards to build scarcity within a commodity card. So we have 50,000 of, whatever XYZ rookie, and then we're gonna break it down by having that same card in a 10, a 9, an 8, and so on and so forth. And so it creates some artificial, or depends how you look at it, creates scarcity within that single asset. Another reason why people grade is just because they like the way that it displays. For people who collect slab cards for their PC, they might think it displays better in a slab, and so they want to do that. And what that also does is it encapsulates the card. It's going to stop it from getting damaged and also adds protection to that card. There's lots of options out there for grading. You guys know them. You got SGC, you got BGS, you got SGC, and then you got the leader in the industry right now, which is PSA. Here in Canada, we got a couple smaller ones. You got MNT and KSA, which do relatively small amount of grading. I think mostly hockey, I would assume. I don't know that, but smaller companies anyway. So we do have some options. And so the question becomes, why do we need another grading company? If you talk to anyone in the hobby, what they're going to say, one of the main pain points that individuals tend to have is when they get a grade back, it's not the grade that they wanted or they expected. They thought it looked like a Gem Mint 10 and they get an 8 back, and so the card comes back in 8, and the question then becomes, why did it get an 8? And I'm not sure why it is, but grading companies seem to refuse to want to tell you, outside of obviously having some subgrades on some slabs, but it doesn't tell you specifically why, which corner was worse or what the surface issue was. Was it scratches? Was it dimples or pits, or what was going on with it? You sort of have to make those assessments on your own, and that's what I think a lot of people want to know, is why did the card get the grade? It's just transparency, right? It's just honesty of that grade, and for some reason it's not being done right now. So this is where Tag comes in. Anytime you start a business, you want to think about what problem you're solving for. So that's the problem that Tag is trying to solve for. You get a card, you don't know why it got that grade. Well, Tag has the answer. They use their digital imaging. You're going to get a full report. They call it the DIG report. So DIG stands for Detailed Images and Grading Report, and you can see exactly why that card got the grade that it did. I think it's really important. I think in terms of the way that people think about grading, this solves a lot of those problems, because you're not going to have that issue again. You're going to be able to see it, and then you can take the card for yourself and you can observe, the issues that are on the card that lowered your grade. So why do I think that Tag is different, or why do I feel differently about it? Remember, this video is more my feeling. There's going to be some facts in there in terms of what Tag's doing and not doing, but regardless, most of it is my own opinion and how I see them and their business model. Jeremy Lee from Sports Cards Live, shout out to Jeremy. I'll put a link below, but he did a 5-part series on Tag. If you want to go check it out, it's long form. It's a lot of hours, but there's a lot of good information in there. And maybe you care, maybe you don't. Hopefully you get something out of this video. I bring you some value, bring it a little bit shorter form. I'm going to try making this video as quick as possible, but go over the points that I think are relatively important. And yeah, so you can check that out at Sports Cards Live. I'll put a link down below. So again, the question is why Tag, and why I think personally Tag is different, okay? So the number one main key reason I think Tag is different is that they essentially solve grading. So what does it mean when you solve grading? And this is assuming that the technology is what they say it is. But again, it goes back to the point of friction where the consumer wants to know that they sent in a card and they got a specific grade, and they want to know why they got that grade. That's what Tag does. So they're incorporating technology to remove the human subjectivity that comes within grading, right? We all hear the stories, maybe our grader is hungry, it's lunchtime, after lunch, maybe they had a good date night with their wife last night and they're just crushing out those 10s, or vice versa. These things are subjective. It's one person's opinion, maybe two. We don't know how other companies do it, but it's one person's opinion in terms of why that card gets the grade that it does. So regardless, it's subjective. Humans are expected to act like machines, and they're not. You know, it's very tough. I'd say impossible to produce accurate grading at scale with a high degree of consistency for humans. And again, that's what TAG's doing with this by using a machine that has one output, which is, you know, defining the true condition of the card and being able to reproduce that with some degree of tolerance. That in itself solves a high percentage of, again, those issues, grievances, the whining, whatever people seem to have with the current grading environment. And for you people who don't grade, and that's fine, but ultimately it boils down to their accuracy and consistency. Point number 2 of why TAG the management team. So if you watch Shark Tank, or maybe you're in business yourself, you likely know that sometimes good people and a good team is actually more valuable than the product or the service that, you know, they come to offer in itself. Sometimes you want the people, right? Steve Cass is the owner of TAG and one of the co-founders, but he also brings a high level of experience. So he's not just a board member within their corporate structure, but he acts as the operations officer or running the business day to day, which seems to be a lot of value. The rest of the team and the board can be found on the website. That's also featured in the Sports Card Live videos. One of the individuals of note is Scott Maxwell, who has 8 years experience, 8 years grading experience with PSA. And it's important to note here that in terms of the grading, that TAG isn't creating a new grading scale. Okay, so with the experience that Scott is bringing, they're having the machine replicate the grade as PSA would grade a card. But the guidelines are essentially PSA guidelines. They're not a proprietary different set of criteria that, you know, we're not familiar with. That seems to be a really important asset for TAG, and Scott seems like a real asset there. Full disclosure, I don't know any of these guys, so if I say Scott like that, he's not a buddy of mine or anything. I've never talked to these individuals. I'm just giving my opinion on what I think of the structure and, again, the model. One of the notes that I did make is an individual, James Sun. James Sun, you'll find him on the page as a board member, and he brings an interesting background to the table. So he's involved in the NFT space, and I'm not going to get into NFTs. I know you guys are cringing and rolling your eyes, and like, that's fine. But I feel generally that NFTs are a little bit misunderstood, and they're pretty polarizing, and that's okay. We're really early. But I think the skill set that he brings is really interesting. I think it's inevitable that NFTs find their way to the trading card market at some point. Not sure the capacity or exactly how that would go, but I think it's sort of an inevitability. I could be wrong, but it seems to make a lot of sense to me. So he's on the board, and I think that was sort of really interesting when I was doing this research, that is a bit of the background that he has. One of the other things that's really important that was sort of alluded to, now I'm making some assumptions here based off of the Sports Card Live interview with Steve, but it seemed like they had access to capital. That's really important, to have the ability to access capital through, whether it's VC investors, however they go about acquiring that capital. Really important to just have access to it, because not everyone does. So will we see big players in the hobby and big money in the hobby associate with TAG? Well, we don't know, but I suspect we may see that. So those are the important management pieces there. Next thing we'll talk about is the slab. So the slab is typically the first thing that people see and associate with a company. And I don't think they make or break a company. They certainly don't. I mean, they shouldn't. Authenticity and the grading should be the first thing, but people do like a good looking slab. And I think TAG slab is pretty good looking. When I'm looking at a slab, what I want to see is I want my attention to go to the card before, the data on the card. I'll call it to the tag or the paper, whatever they call those things. You take a look at someone like CSG, it took them a long time to make the changes that they made to really improve their slab. They have extremely good clarity. Now, I haven't held one of the TAG slabs. I've heard the clarity is very good, but we'll hold that off for another day. The whole point of what I'm trying to get to is the slab is it's not intrusive, it's not obnoxious, it does the job. I mean, I think it does a lot more than that. I really like it, but I just don't think it's going to offend too many people, and I don't think there's too many people who can say that they really hate the slab, but maybe there is. That's up to you. Different strokes for different folks and whatever, but I think the slab's okay. So the slab does what I think they wanted it to do. Next thing we'll talk about, and I think this is, if I was ranking these in order, I think that this is the one that I'm the highest on, is that they're completely disrupting the distribution model of grading as it currently speaks. Now, perhaps not right now, but in the future, they look to have pods. Pods are a self-sustained grading machine where you'll insert your card, it'll get slabbed up, it'll get graded, slabbed up, and you take it home with you. So you maybe go to your LCS or what have you and have that done. And I think that's a really incredible idea. Another one of the friction points or pain points that people have is they just aren't comfortable sending their cards through the mail. I get it. I mean, these things cost quite a bit of money. So these pods really solve that distribution issue. You can imagine, I always think of, you know, I'm a dad going into the LCS with my son and, you know, grabbing a hockey card of his favorite player. And what if at a reasonable rate, we can have that card slabbed right there? And, you know, he's not really going to care about the grade. He doesn't care if it's a 6 or a 10. But you can have that slabbed right there, and then kids like to display those slabs. So it's sort of it brings in a new demographic, and again, totally disrupts that level of distribution. To me, one of the most important aspects of what they're trying to do. I hope that's not overlooked. Now, how close are we to these pods? I don't know. What I will say is it's my understanding that they're relatively high priority, and perhaps sooner than later is when we could be seeing pods. And at the end of the day, what that really does is it's a grassroots way of reaching kids and reaching the hobby and ultimately growing the hobby. So distribution, super important, would be completely disruptive, different, you know, no mail. I think that's where everyone in a utopian world would think, yeah, I want to bring my cards to the LCS, have it done right there. So solving that issue, distribution, huge in my opinion. And the last thing I'll talk about is the technology. So keep in mind that, again, these are my beliefs. I'm generally a believer in technology, and I'm an early adopter by nature. Even though I'm into my 40s, I'm still an early adopter of technology. I believe in it, especially for relatively simple tasks. And I don't think, you know, we put a man on the moon. I don't think grading a piece of cardboard with a bunch of shiny stuff on it is a particularly difficult task. Okay, I think that machines can do that better than 500 or 1,000 different humans with a lot more accuracy and consistency. So I'm all about the technology. Other people don't feel that way. That's fine. You know, let me know in the comments below. Oh, hit the like and subscribe, because I never say that in my videos. So I'm saying it now. But getting back to the technology, I don't think the optimal way to grade cards is to have 500 or 1,000 different sets of eyes looking at these things and trying to become, you know, consistent and accurate with that. I don't want to take away from the time and effort that they've put in to create these machines, because I'm sure it was a lot of it. The principle of grading a card is incredibly simple. The execution of the technology that they're bringing in isn't so simple. You know, not simple at all. And I understand that. So don't think that I'm saying that this was easy for them to do. That's not what I'm saying at all. Ultimately, that technology is there to bring accuracy, consistency, and scalability. And it's also, in turn, just going to reduce overhead. So the technology is critical, and the execution is obviously going to be super critical moving forward. But I do believe in the technology and the grading, and something that I think is really important, and something much closer to an optimal approach for grading, in my opinion. We've seen a lot of grading companies over the last few years. I've been dismissive of pretty much all of them, or you know, ignored them for the most part. But it's clear I feel differently about Tag, and for the reasons that I gave, right? The distribution solution, the different way that they can distribute the service is incredible. I think absolutely game-changing. You know, being able to provide the consistency and the accuracy along with the transparency of the grade, that dig report is so important and provides so much value. So I think that's really smart for them to do that. I've never understood why other grading companies don't show how they grade a card or talk more about the process. We just sort of put it in a magic envelope and it comes back in the slab of choice. And maybe that's okay. I do appreciate the transparency that they bring in terms of the overall process that they bring though. So something Tag's doing and you're not seeing it from others. So that's a bit about Tag. I hope that brought you some value and a bit of an understanding of why I feel that Tag is different. Do you agree with me? Disagree? Leave a comment below. That's up to you. Like, I get it. But full transparency, I do have an order at Tag. I'm going to get that back. I'll be doing another video and maybe we'll dig into that dig report a little bit more. I know that I did show it earlier in the video, but I'll leave you with a question to think about, and that is, do people want accurate grading or do they just want 10s? We'll check you.